Hi, I'm Bonnie, and welcome to Tabletop Setup, where we help you learn to set up the tabletop games you want to play. Today we're going to be taking a look at Colt Express, designed by Christoph Rambo. It's actually a super cool Western game, not normally a theme I would like, but I was in my local gaming store recently and I had some money to burn, and one of the guys at work there recommended this, and I thought I'd take a chance at it, and you know what? It's a super fun game. I was quite surprised. I must say, congratulations, Bill, you picked a good game. So like I said, it's a Western theme. So the story behind it, it's the 11th of July, 1899 at 10 a.m. and the Union Pacific Express has left Folsom, New Mexico with 47 passengers on board. After a few minutes, gunfire and hurrying footsteps on the roof can be heard. Heavily armed bandits have come to rob honest citizens of their wallets and their jewels. Will they succeed in stealing the suitcase holding the Nice Valley Coal Company's weekly pay, despite it having been placed under the supervision of Marshal Samuel Ford? Will these bandits hinder one another more than the marshal, since only the richest one of them can come out on top? So in Colt Express, you play a bandit robbing a train, in case that wasn't obvious, at the same time as other bandits, and your goal is to become the richest outlaw of the Old West. It's 2 to 6 players, which is a nice range of players. Not a lot of games play well at 6. Suggested range is 10 and up, and the game length is about 30 minutes. There's actually not a lot of reading in this game, so I would think probably somebody under 10 could play it, but I'm not a parent, so don't sue me. So we're going to take a look at the components, identify each one, show you how to set the game up. And we made a farty sound. So, rule book, as always. It's a very quick, fast little rule book, about 6 pages. And then we have all the components. So to start with, you have 6 train cars. When you get this game, you actually have to punch these out and assemble them. The instructions aren't bad. Being a little bit of an OCD nerd, I was concerned I was putting the wrong colors together or whatever, but it actually doesn't matter. You just need to make 6 train cars. I'll show a close-up later on, but each one is actually different inside. So you start with the 6 of those. You start with your locomotive, the most important part of your train, right? Without that, you're not going anywhere. We have some train elements, which are just fun little things that come with the game. You end up with cacti, some rock formations. There's some skulls, dead animal skulls, right? It's important for your game to look good while you're going through here. We have a bag of loot tokens. I'll show you some of these individually. Basically, there's 3 different kinds. We have purses. So these are the purses. That was a purse. These are the purses. They range in value from $250 up to $500. They're the random element of the game. You actually don't know how much they are when you first get them. All of the gems in the game are all worth $500 each. And then you start with 1, and in some scenarios you use a second one. You use the briefcase, and that's always worth $1,000. It's actually called a strong box in this game, so that's pretty valuable. So those are the various loot tokens. We'll put those to the side, and we'll show you how you set those up. So these are the round cards. They're divided into different decks depending on how many players. If there's 2 to 4 players, you use the ones labeled 2 to 4. And if there's 5 to 6, you use the ones surprisingly called 5 to 6. And then there's the train station cards. And I'll show you how you set these up to play the game in a few minutes. The other parts that you have, your gaming pawns, they're kind of standard meeples, but yet with a cool Western theme, which is all you can ask for in your Western kind of game. The important one is the yellow one. That's their marshal. This sometimes isn't always figured out right away. This confused me at first because I had a dumb moment when I was setting this game up. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out who the yellow guy was. So I'm just going to point that out. Some of the other cards you have in the deck. These orange ones, these are neutral bullet cards. They look like that. It's an entire deck of the same ones. I'll show you what those are used for. But those are important, and they actually have to be held out separately from the rest of the parts of the game. And then each, depending on the colors, the rest of the game, or the rest of the card decks, are actually just all the cards that go with each character. So when you go to set it up, you would just take your color. My version of the game actually came with these bigger player tokens, or player mats, which is interesting. The base game, according to the instructions, come with these smaller cards. But like I said, my version came with the bigger ones, which I think adds more to the flair and to the look of the game. So actually, I don't ever use these smaller ones. All right, so now we're going to get into setup. So we're going to set the game up for a 3 to 6 player game. Like I said, there is a variant in there for a 2-player game, but you basically play two characters each. But the setup itself is the same. So to set up the game, like I said, each player chooses a character. We're gonna let's pick Belle for our example. So you take, in this case, Belle is purple. So you take her big player card. You would look through for her purple cards. And all of these are the same for everyone. The one thing to note in here is that there are two actual kinds of decks mixed in one. The top ones are your action cards. And then there's a series of bullet cards, and each player has their own unique set of these. And it's basically showing 6 bullets down to 1 bullet. You give, when you shoot another player, you give one of these cards and it goes in their deck. The cool thing in this game that they thought of when they designed it, that the backs of all the cards are identical. These go into your opponent's deck and they fill up with schlock, so they're less likely to pull good cards during the game. So you actually want to shoot other people as much as possible. But the neat thing is there's no way of knowing when they're drawing these kind of cards. They could end up with a handful of just bullet cards if they had a really bad day. So you separate those two areas out. On the fancy character cards, basically you put your bullet cards on the bullet spot, you shuffle your other cards, and you just place them face down here. You have your pawn. In this case, it's kind of a pinky purple color. And the other thing to set up, every person starts with $250 loot bag, and they always go face down on your character card. These can be stolen and dropped throughout the game, so it's important that nobody else knows as you're picking other ones up and dropping them. It's important for nobody else to know how much they're worth. So that's how you set up each player. To set up the train, it's quite simple. You always have your locomotive, because without that, how are you going to get anywhere? You're never going to get to town. And then you choose randomly, or however you want, you choose 1 train car for every player. So if we're setting up for a 4-player game, we're just going to randomly take 4 train cars. You just hook them all up. You can have them going around a corner. Maybe there's a bend in the road. Maybe there's a bit of a hill, because there's a bit of a hill on my filming surface. And so now we're in rocky terrain, and oh my God, what are we going to do? You have to add your flair, because it's very important to have a nice, a nice look to your game as you're playing. Cacti are very important. It adds to the whole Western theme. Without that, what would be the point? You always start your marshal character. He always starts in the locomotive. And as I said earlier, he always starts with the strong box worth 1,000 gold. And that goes in there with him. Like I said, so you place 1 locomotive and as many train cars as there are players. You put each train car, and again, I'll show you a close-up of this. That was a bad example. Inside each one, I'll have to show you an example of this, but each train car has a different amount of loot that it starts with, and it's clearly indicated inside in icons. And so you would take a few minutes and you would basically set each of those up. So again, if you're doing loot bags, they should always go face down and randomized. And you just kind of mix them up. This one, for example, gets 2 loot and a gem. This one gets 1 loot and a gem. And we're just going to put some stuff in here just for this example. Once that's set up, like I said, you place the marshal. He always starts... Oh no, our cactus fell down. We had an ecological disaster going on. The marshal always starts in the locomotive, and he always starts with $1,000 in the strong box, because that's kind of the goal of the game, right? This was the payroll that you're trying to steal. So then this is where the round cards I told you about earlier come into play. Because we're setting up for a 4-person game, we're going to take the cards that are all labeled 2 to 4. We're going to shuffle those up, and we're going to randomly draw 4 of them, and the rest just go out of the game. There are also 3 train station cards, and same thing, no matter what game you're playing, you're going to end on one of these. The game is always 5 rounds. So again, we're going to shuffle those, take one of those, place it on the bottom. And this is how you determine what round. As the game progresses, each time you go around and you finish a round of the game, that card goes to the bottom and you flip over the next one. And these give you ideas. It tells you what's happening in this round. For example, in this game, there's going to be 4 cards played, and the second one is going to be face down while the others are face up. And then at the end of the game, or at the end of this round, a certain event is going to happen. And all of these have that kind of thing, different numbers of cards, different ways they're played, but it kind of keeps the randomization going, which is one of the things I like. It gives you some very good replayability in this game. So this deck goes in front of player 1, and player 1 is the person who controls the deck. And then as it goes around to the new player 1, they control the deck. You have to randomly decide who goes first. We often just do a way of you just take all the pawns in your hand, shake them, and drop one person. So in this case, green would go first. Everybody who's an odd number, so in a 4-player game, player 1 and 3, they both start in the caboose, and the even number players, being 2 and 4, because I can do math, they start in the second train. And that's exactly how you start this game. It's quite simple. Like I said, it's fun to set up. It's a really fun action game. I recommend, if you've not seen this and I'd never heard of it, I give this game a thumbs up. This one is super fun. And so there you go. That's Colt Express. You can get more information and show notes on our website at tabletopsetup.com or youtube.com/tabletopsetup. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time on Tabletop Setup. We've helped you get started. Now go play.